Harry Houdini was one of the most famous escape artists in the world. I presume that most of you have heard of Harry Houdini. Hello, good morning. And you online as well. So I presume you know a bit about him, but I'm going to presume something that you don't know. That before he was famous, he actually spent a month in Halifax. Yes, he did. He did several shows. They were not very successful. Didn't draw large crowds. He did escape from the Halifax jail as part of his show. But things went so poorly that he and his wife were almost destitute. And it's actually recorded that while here in Halifax, they actually slept in a corridor. And they decided that the dream of making it in showbiz was over. It was time to go back to New York and get a real job. But they had 2 gigs left, and they decided it was the right thing to fulfill the contract. So they did the show. And the show was held at St. Peter's Catholic Church on Maple Street. Now, this is a true story. Now, that's the old church, the church that burned down in the 1960s. St. Peter's Hall, which I presume was in the basement, they built a stage there to get ready for the show. The show was sponsored by the St. Peter's Total Abstinence Society. That was abstinence from alcohol. We don't have that committee anymore in the parish. If anyone wants to volunteer for it, you can talk to me after Mass. It was July 6, 1896, and tickets were sold for a whopping 10 cents. It was a sellout crowd. On stage, on the stage that had been erected in the hall, Houdini was bound hand and foot. He was put into a trunk which was tied with a rope and locked, and several men from the parish pulled him over to the left side of the stage behind the curtain. And then the crowd waited with bated breath for a couple of minutes and were absolutely astonished when Houdini walked out on stage. He was a sensation. The next show sold out, and they would have sold out a third show had it not been for the fact that the parish hall was already booked for a pie eating contest. Now, I'm thinking there must have been a parish festival or fair going on, because those are not normal parish activities. But here's the thing, and several historians will point to this moment. When he came here to our parish, it's a crazy story, I know. They had decided to quit. People have said that the show in this parish hall, right in this space, in this area, was the first successful international show that he did. And the experience of performing at our parish changed his mind about quitting. 4 years later, Houdini would be carried down the boulevards of Berlin by a cheering throng, and he would be known all over the world. That's a crazy story, isn't it? In the gospel today, we hear about the encounter that led Jesus to proclaim his famous words, "Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and to God that what is God's." Now, these words represent an escape worthy of Harry Houdini, an escape from a trap laid by his enemies. You see, the gospel tells us that the Pharisees and the Herodians got together to attack Jesus. And when those 2 groups get together, you know that trouble's coming. Because the Pharisees and Herodians hated each other. The Pharisees were religious rigorists, and the Herodians were heretical traitors. But they got together to attack Jesus. We also hear that they played to his ego. At least they tried to play to his ego. Listen to what they said. "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with truth and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality." Blah, blah, blah. What a bunch of slimy creeps. Because they didn't mean a word of it Then came the sucker punch. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? You see, it was a classic catch-22, a dilemma. No matter which answer Jesus gives, he will be condemned. If he says, yes, it's proper to pay taxes, he'll lose the support of the people and be condemned as a traitor to his people, his nation, and God. If he says, no, it's not lawful to pay taxes, he'll be arrested by the Romans, and the crucifixion will happen a few years earlier. Now, it's not really a sucker punch, is it? Because Jesus clearly saw them coming. He responds to them by calling them a bunch of hypocrites. He's ready for them. And as swiftly as Harry Houdini slipping free from leg irons, Jesus delivers his own right hook after taking the coin from them and asking them, whose head is this? He says these famous words, give therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. These escape words of Jesus actually demonstrate an important principle for us who are people of faith. These words of Jesus tells us that we exist in two domains, two realms, the earthly and the heavenly, the realm of Caesar and the realm of God. As Christians, we exist in both. We bring our whole selves to both. You see, there are two sides to the coin, but there is only one coin. We exist in two dimensions, but our existence is not schizophrenic. We are called to bring our faith out into the world, and we are called to bring every aspect of our life out there in here, to be under God's realm. As I said at the beginning of Mass, this is the fourth and final week of our preaching series on euthanasia, or as it's called in Canada, euphemistically, MAiD. MAiD is an acronym for Medical Assistance in Dying. Now, a quick review is in order because these homilies were planned to build on one another. For the sake of anyone here today who hasn't had a chance to see those homilies, if you missed them, they are available on our YouTube channel. 3 weeks ago, in week 1, we looked at how we as Christians must be neither ignorant nor indifferent. We can't be ignorant. We must learn. And we cannot be indifferent to the issue of euthanasia. We looked at what euthanasia is and is not, and some of the presumptions we were making in this preaching series, and discussed how easy it is for the right to die to become the obligation to die. In the second week, Father Dominic preached on how we should see our lives, that we are stewards of our lives. We're not owners, we're stewards of our life. Last week, Deacon Larry took us through how acceptance of euthanasia has grown in our society, and he contrasted the divine narrative around suffering and dying with that proposed by our secular culture. And today, this weekend, I hope to make a case for action, that we as Christians ought to move to action. In this case, to move to action is based on a simple truth that our voice matters. Our voice matters, not just in church circles, but out there in the world. You see, we are called to live integrated lives in both realms. The realm of Caesar and the realm of God, the realm of the secular and the sacred. This integration is not simply based on good psychology and sociology, but it's also good theology. Jesus himself had two sides to the one coin. He was one person, but he was fully human and fully divine. For Christians then, because of the incarnation, because of our belief that God took human flesh, that God broke into our world in such a radical way, there is no absolute distinction between the secular and the sacred. Now, the secular is an appropriate concept. It's a legitimate concept to distinguish secular and sacred. But because God has broke into our world so radically, there is no absolute distinction. All of reality is glimmering with the hue of the sacred, and nothing is too secular to bring about the absence of the divine. But there is another position with which we are likely much more familiar, and that is the secularist position. And I want to distinguish between a secular position and a secularist position. Secularism basically says to us, no, 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 no. If you people insist on having faith, then you must leave it at home. Faith has no place in what is called the public square or the public sphere. And any positions or views that have been influenced by faith are tainted and unwelcome. Now, secularists will say they believe in religious freedom, but what they really mean is that they believe in the freedom of worship. They're okay with what happens in here on Sunday, just as long as we keep it here. Just don't bring it outside of the walls. Keep it tied up and locked in a box, just like Harry Houdini. And so often, people of faith remain silent, and we even begin to believe that our voices do not matter. Now, proponents of this view often reference the principle of the separation of church and state. Now, we've all heard of this principle, and it's actually a legitimate principle. No one is advocating for the establishment of theocracies, but it's a principle that's often misinterpreted to support the thou must leave all faith convictions at home mindset. The origin of this principle, in fact, is very interesting. It goes back to the experience of the 17th, 18th, and 19th century in the British Empire. Because at that time, there was an established church. There was an official Church of England that was imposed on everyone, Catholics and Protestants alike. If you were an Anglican, you had to follow the mandates of that church. You had to pay a tithe. You had to pay a tax. Your marriage wasn't valid unless you went and got married in front of the Anglican clergyman. It was an imposed religion. And the people who came to North America embraced this principle, not to say that people of faith can't operate in the public sphere, but to say that the state, the secular state, cannot impose a religion on people. So it had very much the opposite meaning of what we give it today. Think about this. In their own lifetimes, would anyone ever have told the likes of Martin Luther King Jr. to just leave his faith at home? What do you think? Who would have told Gandhi that his faith convictions had no role in shaping public policy? Who would have told William Wilberforce? And by the way, that's the guy in the bottom right with the cool hairdo. That's William Wilberforce. He was a leading advocate for the abolition of the slave trade and slavery. He spent his whole life working on this. Who would have told him that he could not allow his faith to influence his work? He was completely motivated by the fact that he was a follower of Jesus. They, and so many other men and women like them, knew that their voice mattered. We live in two realms, but there is only one coin. You see, euthanasia is not only a concern to us because we are Catholics, because we're Christians, but because we're Canadians. Euthanasia represents a clear and present danger to the social fabric of our nation. Last week, Deacon Larry spoke about why most people choose euthanasia, and for many, it's about fear of being a burden. It's about lack of care, long waiting periods for treatment, lack of long-term care, and lack of palliative care. He also spoke about how Canada is moving to allow euthanasia for people who suffer from mental health as of March 2024. And I read an article yesterday that some are even saying this could be a solution for some people with drug addictions. Now, last week, there was actually a vote in the House of Parliament. There was a bill introduced to try to stop the application of euthanasia to people with mental illness. And it was defeated in our House of Commons by a vote of 167 to 150. It seems that we continue to move in this direction. Dear people, we cannot remain silent. We should not, we ought not remain silent about what is happening. Our voice matters. We need to render to God what is God's and to Caesar what is Caesar. And I said that my goal in this homily was to move us to action, and it is. Now, we want to make that as easy for you as possible. So we have made these cards, these very, very nice, crisp cards. And your way out today, everyone is going to receive one of these cards. On one side of the card, there's two calls to action. On one side, there is a website and a QR code, if you don't like to type in URLs. If you don't know what a QR code is, just ask someone under the age of 14. They'll tell you what it is. That's what I had to do originally when I found out. But it will take you to a website where you'll be invited to put in your name, your email address, and your postal code. Once you hit submit, it will create a letter for you addressed to your MLA, to your provincial representative. Now, there's a pre-written letter, but you can go and edit the letter, you can change it. But the letter that's there is very polite, it's not rude, and it's simply saying, we have serious concerns about the lack of care for people who are sick, lack of palliative care, and we have deep concerns about offering euthanasia to people suffering from mental health. I did this yesterday. It took me about 20 seconds. So please take the card and do it. Now, on the other side of the card, if you flip it over, there's another QR code, another website. This will take you to a registration page for a course that we're going to put on in our parish. You see, 4 homilies are still not enough to adequately address this situation, this topic. And so we're going to be offering in the month of November a 3-evening session throughout the month entitled Dying with Christ, Living with Hope. And the sessions are going to be led by Father Dominic, Deacon Larry Worthen, who spoke last week, and by Todd Howlett, a physician who's a member of our parish. And some of the media resources that are going to be used actually feature a few of our parishioners. Claire, you're in it. So you can go to our website or use the QR code. Dear friends, our voice matters. Bringing both realms of our life together in this issue serves God and it serves Caesar. Let's not leave our potential to influence our society tied up in a trunk. Let's throw off the shackles and make a difference. Amen.